Hiring internationally can be, well, a bit of a minefield, right? Especially in a country with a legal landscape as rich and complex as South Africa's. But what if you could tap into its amazing talent pool with total confidence? That's exactly what we're going to break down today. So, you've got your eye on the incredible talent in South Africa, and you're ready to grow your team. And you know what? That is a fantastic move. But before you jump in and make that first hire, there are some unique local rules you absolutely have to know to avoid any costly surprises down the road. You can think of South African employment law kind of like a complex maze. It's got its own unique twists and turns. But hey, don't worry, we're here to hand you the map. So let's get started. First things first, let's talk about the money. Section 1 is all about compensation and tax. Because let's be real, if you don't get this part right from the very beginning, nothing else is going to matter. Okay, so South Africa uses what's called a pay-as-you-earn system, or PAYE for short. It's a progressive system, which just means the more you earn, the higher the percentage of tax you pay. And as you can see, it's split into 7 different brackets, starting at a pretty modest 18% and climbing all the way up to 45% for those top-tier salaries. Now, beyond just income tax, there are a few other mandatory contributions to think about. What's really interesting here is how the responsibility is shared. Both you and your employee chip in 1% each for the Unemployment Insurance Fund, or UIF. But you, the employer, are solely responsible for the 1% Skills Development Levy and all the contributions for COIDA, which is basically the country's workplace injury insurance. Here's a critical number you'll definitely want to jot down for your budget. 28.79 South African Rand. That's the national minimum wage per hour. And get this isn't just for 1 or 2 industries. It's a universal standard that applies to pretty much every worker in the country. All right, now that we've got the financials covered, let's move into the day-to-day experience for your team. Section 2 is all about employee leave, their rights, and working hours.
The standard work week in South Africa, it's capped at a maximum of 45 hours. Typically, that breaks down to about 9 hours a day for a 5-day work week. And anything beyond that is officially overtime and has to be paid at a higher rate, usually 1.5 times the normal pay.
Now for the fun stuff, time off. Every single employee is legally entitled to 21 consecutive days of paid annual leave. Now, for most people working a standard 5-day week, that translates to about 15 working days off each year, not including public holidays. And it doesn't stop with vacation time. There are several other key mandatory leave types. Employees get a sick leave allowance of 30 paid days over a 3-year cycle. The law also carves out 4 whole months for maternity leave, 10 days for paternity, and 10 weeks for the primary caregiver in an adoption. But wait, here is a super important detail that catches so many foreign employers by surprise. That 4 months of maternity leave we just talked about? Well, it's generally unpaid by the employer. The employee can claim benefits from the Unemployment Insurance Fund, but only if they've been paying into it. That's a really critical distinction to make.
Okay, let's shift gears and talk about what's often the most challenging part of any employment relationship: termination. In South Africa, this is a particularly high-stakes game, where even small mistakes can have some pretty serious financial and legal consequences.
This right here, this is probably the single most important thing you need to understand. The idea of at-will employment, which is common in some other countries, simply does not exist in South Africa, period. You cannot dismiss an employee without cause. Every single termination has to be justified and has to follow a very strict, fair procedure. And part of that fair procedure is giving the proper notice. The minimum notice period is set by law, and it scales up with how long the employee has been with you. It starts at 1 week for your newest employees and goes all the way up to 4 weeks for anyone who's been on your team for a year or more. And if you're letting someone go because of redundancy or other operational reasons, there's another financial obligation you need to be aware of: severance pay. The law requires a minimum of 1 week's pay for every single completed year that employee has worked for you.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. Wow, this sounds complicated. And you know what? It can be. But there is a strategic shortcut that smart companies are using to navigate all of this complexity. Let's talk about the employer of record, or EOR model.
So what in the world is an EOR? Just think of it as your local partner on the ground. They become the official legal employer for your team in South Africa. They handle all the tricky administrative and legal stuff. We're talking payroll, taxes, benefits, and all that compliance, which means you don't have to go through the long and expensive process of setting up your own company there. Now, it is really, really important not to confuse an employer of record with an agent of record or AOR. The difference is simple, but it's crucial. An EOR is for hiring full-time employees, and it takes on all the legal responsibilities that come with that. An AOR, on the other hand, is just for processing payments to independent contractors. They are two very different tools for two very different jobs.
So why is an EOR such a game changer in South Africa? Well, it's a direct solution to all the complex things we've just talked about. You get to hire the best talent without the massive headache of setting up a local company. You can get new hires up and running in a matter of days, not months. And most importantly, it guarantees you're 100% compliant with all those local laws, which just massively reduces your risk.
So, there you have it. That's your essential playbook for hiring in South Africa. We've gone over the taxes, the leave policies, the tricky termination rules, and the best strategic solution to manage it all. The South African talent pool is absolutely ready and waiting. The only real question left is, are you ready to build your team the smart way?